Good afternoon and welcome to the third in series of AgClinics that we're hosting. ThinkAg is hosting with GFI Good Food Institute. We are quite proud of our partnership with GFI. We believe GFI is really presenting the cutting edge on what's happening in this space, and they are driving the agenda as a not-for-profit in the Indian context as well as internationally. So really, this has been a very good partnership. Sporadic, I may say, because of the COVID interruptions. However, we finally reached the third part of this knowledge product. ThinkAg is a not-for-profit platform that's a little over 4 years old now. And we've been working across the food tech and the ag tech space. In fact, in the next 6 weeks or so, we should be coming out with a investment landscape product on the food tech space. The past 2 years, we've been bringing out the investment landscape on the ag tech space. So we are complementing that with this knowledge product. You'll hear more about ThinkAg as we go along in the coming months. But without much further ado, I would like to just introduce the panelists and the presenters for today. The format we're going to follow is Hussein, who is with the Good Food Institute, will give a brief presentation, followed by his role as a moderator with the 5 panelists. And then we'll wrap up with key points. And if any time is available, we'll definitely take questions from the audience to complement the discussions. So quick introductions. Hussein holds a master's degree in agriculture and applied economics from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in the US. Through his experiences with organizations like the World Wildlife Fund and Soya Bean Innovation Lab, Hussein has worked on international research projects to understand the impact of food production and consumption from a broader holistic perspective, including the environmental footprint. Nicole is a senior investment specialist at Good Food, GFI. Nicole works with startups, investors, distributors, and corporate partners to build out the early stage smart protein ecosystem in India. We have Sridhar. Sridhar is an out-and-out retailer. He's currently the category head, private label food and non-food at Big Basket, recently acquired by Tata's. He has almost 2 decades of experience working with retailers like Hypercity, Spencer's, Nilgiris, etc. Tejas Parekh is the country manager at Cornell Brothers India. He has spent the last 12 years driving growth and strategy in the life sciences business. His portfolio includes personal care, healthcare, food, nutrition, and pharma, among others. Over 25 years of experience, he has worked collaboratively with many consumer-facing businesses and partnered with them to drive innovation and build brands. He brings a unique perspective and foresight that helps Cornell dive deep into industries and applications that are at nascent stage, and indeed, partners and implement further. Pradeep is the co-founder of Evolve Foods, and which is a plant-based meat startup. Pradeep started his career in the real estate sector, and after spending more than 2 decades in that sector, he decided to take the plunge into the world of plant-based meats and smart proteins when he and his partner co-founded a vegan-friendly cafe, House of Satan, in Bangalore. I hope I got that right.
Yeah, that is perfect.
With an intent to develop an India-focused offering. Yeah, very, very exciting and quite a shift from real estate to this space. Ankush Jamakdani, sorry if I got that wrong. Ankush is a co-founder of OT, a plant-based dairy startup that manufactures highest quality oats beverages, giving you an unparalleled taste, texture, and nutritional profile. OT was born from a passion of fitness, love for the planet, its animals, and lastly, an obsession with the road less traveled. Ankush is an experienced human resource and management professional with a demonstrated history of working and building brands across sectors, including IT, retail, healthcare, hospitals, and pharmaceuticals. So we have a group with a very diverse background, though what they're doing now is quite converging into the topic for today, and very keen to hear what emerges from this conversation. And as I said at the beginning, this is a very nascent space, plant-based or space, etc. But we should see a lot of action here in the coming years. And hopefully many of these players will probably go on to become unicorns. So without much further ado, I would like to hand over to Hussein for his opening presentation, giving insights and economic analysis on this space. Hussein, over to you.
Thanks a lot for that, Raman.
You have the controls, Hussein?
Yeah, I can share my screen. Can you guys all see my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. So I think since we've had our last ThinkAg webinar in September, the entire ecosystem has had a lot of exciting updates. There have been around launches across plant-based meat, eggs, and dairy, and across all platforms. And the current products, I think the list of products stands to around 50 plus products. And we've got definitely a lot of interesting activity as well as promotions going on that are targeted towards the core early adopter target group, which is basically young, upwardly mobile, urban, mostly in urban areas, as well as those having disposable incomes. Not only startups have launched, but large FMCG players have really started looking at this sector. And at the start of 2022, it was announced that ITC will be launching with launching their own range of plant-based products. But not only that, I think Blue Tribe Foods launched their first ever plant-based meat ad during the ICC World T20. And you all know that there have been a lot of food products that have been marketed. And how cool is it that now plant-based meat is also being one of those products being marketed to millions of viewers. To make that point that really plant-based meat is going mainstream, we've seen retailers like Swiggy put plant-based meat products as a category under meat in the Instamart. Swiggy Instamart makes around 1 million deliveries a week, and they currently serve around 11 Indian cities. These products are mainly Blue Tribe Foods and Good Dot Foods, which are available in 11 Indian cities, but they will be soon available in 19 Indian cities. A lot of the new plant-based meat products are not only available in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, but they are also trickling in towards the mass market.
I'm happy to jump in here. I think what we've been saying at GFI India is really for mass market adoption of these plant-based meat products, that to move beyond the early adopter category, it's important that these products start be costing the same or less than conventional meat. And there've been a lot of innovation that's been done on the startup side, both in terms of format and in terms of scaling up production to the point where they have been able to substantially reduce prices from when these products were first launched. And we're looking forward to seeing more of that as the industry scales across the length and the breadth of the country, as demand for these products increases. We're really looking forward to more changes in terms of just price parity towards conventional meat.
Thanks, Nicole. I think leading on from that, I would also give an example of Haldiram's launching these products at around 29 rupees and 45 rupees, which is much, much cheaper than what you see in the West. What's happening in the West is that products are finding it difficult to achieve price parity, and these products are usually priced at a premium. But to really have mass adoption in India, we will have to reduce prices, and it's great to see brands already doing that at the start. There's also mass category awareness building, which is required. And Imagine Meats, as you know, was launched by a tweet from Shah Rukh Khan, and Good Dot Foods signed up a partnership with Neeraj Chopra for to serve as their brand ambassador. So this is all very, very encouraging signs that plant-based meat is truly going mainstream. Now, even though all this market activity has happened in the last couple of years, the main question that all our stakeholders have asked us, what is the market size of this entire industry, and and how can it impact India's economic future? To really answer some of these questions, we conducted a study with Deloitte and with Deloitte India, and we have come up with some numbers on market size as well as export potential. And we've used 2030 as a time frame and have modeled 3 scenarios: a base case and 2 upside cases. This analysis is still underway, and we will be putting the finishing touches and releasing it later in the year. So a lot of our modeling is based on many assumptions, such as price parities across product types. And then there's, of course, market penetration and market adoption, as well as investments across the supply chain that are really required to not only meet the growing demand, but also to the price is lower. We really need to produce this at scale. So do we have the production capacity in India to really meet this increasing demand? And we should definitely note that none of these projections are like what will exactly happen, but these are just projections, and we need to do a lot of work to even get to any of the upside cases. It's a significant achievement, but it will take significant effort. I'll just come back to some of the numbers that we are seeing. So you can see that plant-based meat in India has a market share of 1,280 crore to 3,400 crores by 2030. Plant-based dairy has a market share of 3,409 crores to 9,000 crores in 2030, and plant-based eggs has a 420 crore to 1,275 crore market share by 2030. For export potential of plant-based, one of the major things to consider here is that we have a good potential to export unique not only finished products, but also unique ingredients. India is home to a large agri-biodiversity, and we are already seeing demand for a lot of these products, which are not only soy or wheat or pea based, but also chickpea and millets, 2 crops that we really grow a lot in India. And the export potential numbers for plant-based meat are from 2,194 crore to 6,824 crore in 2030. And for plant-based dairy, it's 459 crore to 1,889 crore. Just because this is such a nascent market, we will be closely seeing this segment, especially over the next decade, and we'll also come back to it as a point in the panel. So how do our numbers compare with what's happening globally? Globally, the plant-based meat market is supposed to reach around $74 billion to $100 billion. And the cultivated meat market is supposed to grow to around $25 billion. But you have to understand that one of those columns, the projected share of the global meat market for all these categories is less than 10%. So, plant-based meat and dairy will just be a percentage of the entire market. entire global meat and dairy market. And that's because 2020 to 2030, this next decade, is going to be really important to set ourselves up for success. And what we are seeing globally with analysis done by our affiliates, with analysis done by different firms, a lot of these investment firms, is that this decade is really important to set the base, and we can potentially see faster market adoption post 2030. But that's all if there's a lot of work to be done on price, taste, as well as convenience, and really I think building out this entire industry in this next decade. Without that, none of these numbers really can be achieved. And for some categories, you will see that market adoption can happen much faster. But for food and agriculture, when you're looking at building new industries, it takes time and it takes substantial capital to really, build a whole a new industry from scratch. It's not exactly as simple as, you develop an app and you have millions of downloads in a few weeks. It takes a lot of effort on the ground, and to really dive deeper into that, we're going to move on to what's actually happening on the ground with this next panel.
Thanks, Hussein. I think the opportunities are fairly significant, and obviously, given that we are a large, highly concentrated market, I think there is a lot for entrepreneurs and for ingredient companies like what Tejas represents to actually offer. Obviously, from a taste perspective, India pretty much presents the entire diversity of palates. So I think the difficulty would be to make a choice as to what is your point of entry and where do you decide to stay when you stay the course. So look forward to an exciting panel discussion. Over to you, Hussein, to moderate and take this on.
Yeah, so thank you, Raman. I'll start off with just talking about how you guys, got involved with this space, and what are you guys actually doing. So Sridhar, I know that Big Basket has been one of the leaders when it comes to e-commerce and positioning plant-based dairy and meat products. So I would want to actually ask you how, what drove you to the space, and what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, thanks, Hussein. Thanks for the wonderful opportunity that GFI has given me to share a few thoughts about what Big Basket as a company and as a team we think about plant-based dairy meat alternatives. For us as a buying and merchandising team, so internally we interact with a lot of vendors on this plant-based meat or dairy products, and we even look at the consumer trends actually. Because with e-commerce in space, you're that closer to customer. Earlier, in a supermarket or a hypermarket kind of a land space, yeah, you would know the customer by most probably by his bill value or a customer loyalty card or something like that. But in the e-commerce space, the beauty is that you know him by his name and PIN code actually. That's a major advantage that you have. So taking that visual cue, we had done a very small survey. I will not take more than 2 or 3 minutes actually. Interestingly, this was done 2 months ago. This was sent to the entire base of Big Basket. Now, these are very, very basic questions about awareness of vegan products or vegan-based dairy products on platform. Surprisingly, a total of 300 people actually responded to this. So the question number 1 goes saying that, have you heard about vegan food or plant-based dairy alternatives or mock meats? Surprisingly, 70% of them said yes. Moving to the second question, the second question says that, have you heard of any international vegan food brands like Impossible Foods, Good God, Beyond Meat? Overwhelming 80% of them said that no, and only 20% said yes. Then have you heard about any Indian plant-based or vegan food brands? 80% again said no. Very few people said yes, and they talked about only those brands that are available on the Big Basket platform. Have you ever tried plant-based or vegan-fed food products? Again, here 60% say no and 40% say yes. Then would you like to buy plant or vegan food products? 60% say yes and 40% say no. And what type of vegan products would we be willing to try? So around 60% of the crowd said that we would want to try plant-based dairy products. And that's what is visible on the platform. So if you look at this entire space of vegan dairy or vegan-based plant alternatives, from a customer point of view or from a retailer point of view, because at the end of the day, the basic job of a retailer is to make products that customer is asking for. So the awareness level is very, very low, what we realized from this survey. Not many people know about vegan products. Often vegan products is confused to vegetarianism in India specifically. And you have a huge base of 30% population actually by these surveys conducted by government where vegetarian population is 30%. So I think so one is the awareness aspect of this. And second is brands coming into this space. That are two key things actually that I can share with the crowd here.
Yeah, thanks a lot for those insights, Sridhar. And moving on to actual plant-based dairy, and unlike many of the plant-based dairy brands that have launched, OT has really decided to focus on the B2B channel. So Ankush, could you tell us more about your journey and what's working well in the moment? Ankush, can you hear me?
Ankush, we can't hear you.
Ankush, we actually can't hear you still. Yeah, we can, in the meantime, move to Pradeep. So Pradeep, you've also launched with various restaurants in Mumbai and Bangalore. So, what's been the response from them and, what are your plans for the future?
Thanks, Hussain. So since we are talking about food, it is all about tasting is believing. So our approach with Horeca has been to make sure that people are able to taste the product in the right way, because the category doesn't exist, so to speak. It is still emerging. It is being built by multiple enterprises, including Sridhar. Sridhar, just one observation. I was trying to get in touch with multiple marketplaces, and most of the brands are sort of fitting into gourmet food section because there is no specific category. So I think the awareness building is going to lag as long as you're being blended amongst a group of other offerings. So what you have done, what Swiggy has done, is a brilliant move because it helps us build that particular category awareness. And coming to Evolved Foods, the core of our offering is that it is highly versatile. So the whole discussion about Indian cuisine being one of the most revered, very close to our culture, and the cooking styles vary every 50 kilometers. So, so there is no one specific offering that can really serve the palate of the customer. So that's why we have come out with something which is highly versatile. So we are working with the restaurants to make sure that the tasters are happening through a credible channel. So people are getting aware of how it tastes like, what are the goods and bads of this product, so they can make their own decision. And from a Horeca standpoint, if you see, they get to create something absolutely new, which has not been explored before. I don't know in our lifetime how many such opportunities have been out there where restaurants can completely change the experience what they're offering to their consumers. So this is a great opportunity for them to work with some of the brands that we have in the industry right now and create that unique experiences as we move towards a more sustainable future. From a business standpoint, we will continue to work with Horeca partners because it is one of the building blocks for us, very core focus area. And Evolved Foods will be available across multiple cities, pan-India, through Horeca partners. From a consumer trial perspective, we will be making it available in Bangalore first for the consumers, and subsequently we will see how we can scale it.
Thanks a lot for the just an overview of your journey. And Ankush, can we actually get back to you because we'd like to see how we've now known how plant-based meat brands are partnering with restaurants.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Great. So I think we try to keep it simple. In India, I think a lot is residing on the taste. So we had to make sure that the taste palette is something which is being satisfied for the consumers, right? And fortunately, oat milk is one of those plant-based milks which seems to be having a good amount of B2B use cases in terms of its versatile nature. The frothing to make cappuccinos, to make smoothies, to trial and experiment in baking. So I think the B2B use cases has been considerably larger than an almond milk or a soy milk, and kind of somewhere there where it can give some competition to dairy. So that's encouraging. And I mean, this being India, of course, taste is very important. So when we look at soy or almond, it's quite pleasant, the way oat milk feels, to be very honest. So that's something that will work in advantage going forward. And also, I think the fact that it's a heart-friendly drink made from oats, so it's got these healthy beta-glucan fibers, and there is surprisingly awareness about that. I didn't expect that. We have awareness about that in the market. People do relate oats directly to being cardiovascular friendly, and that's something that should make it easy for us. And of course, I mean, we have large lactose intolerant population, and that's been there for a while. But however, we see some traction happening in the healthcare segments, and hopefully from a B2B standpoint, we should be able to crack that segment. So yeah, I think that's something we have learned in this journey, that B2B has potential to be formidable. And somehow in India, the B2B has this FOMO, I can't miss out. So that happens, and maybe smart companies and smart products can leverage that in whatever capacity they can. So yeah, those are some of our observations in the market so far.
Exactly. And, continuing to talk about B2B, we often speak of India as a potential for plant-based ingredients and as a sourcing hub for plant-based ingredients for the world. So, how does Kunal India view this space going into the future, Tejas?
Well, good evening, guys. Thank you, Hussain, GFI, for having me on this panel. Good to share thoughts and ideas. So just a brief overview. I think it will put the discussion so far in perspective. We are an ingredients seller. We are a specialty ingredients distribution company. That's who we are. Now, what that means for us is while we are still governed by the model that we do not manufacture anything, we still represent some top-notch manufacturers and then help them scale up their B2B markets in markets of their choice. At the same time, we have to be very mindful of which market we are operating in. So Cornell India primarily sells ingredients into the Indian marketplace. We have large multinational companies in Europe, North America who we represent, and then we bring their product into India. So our model is mainly selling into India, while your question was more on how India functions as a sourcing hub. But having said that, over the years, we've toyed with various ingredients, and we still think India is a very nascent food processing marketplace. I mean, forget vegan or forget dairy, we're not even a percentage of what most developed countries like to call their food processing places. So we've always had a situation where we are trying out products which are probably 5 years ahead of their time or 2 years ahead of their time. We're trying to seed smaller companies. We're trying to pitch to larger FMCG companies in the hope and expectation that the market sort of scales up. So one of the ingredients we work with since the last 15 years has been soy, and then everything related to soy, the texturizing part and the isolates. And I remember back in 2009-10, nobody spoke the words mock meat, or nobody spoke about meat analogs. It was always, we were trying to we even worked with nutrition institutes to sort of promote the nutritional aspects more than anything else. It was never like a alternative meat choice. But the more we interacted, the more we found out that for Indians in their regular palate, vegetarian-based protein is anyway such a big part of the palate. Right? So I mean, if you look at it, I think we have 25% of the global consumption of pulses worldwide. Around the same number as far as how much we produce for the world. You go to any household, moong or urad or chana, these are very well-known dishes that everybody eats. Now, so far that export has been limited to ultimate usage of these ingredients as they are. What is driving change in a big way is what the West has been able to do in scaling up meat alternatives, and therefore the subsequent interest in nutritional composition of these other plant-based proteins. So the way I see it, I think, on the one hand, we have policy and government which talks about how we want to get into more value-added agricultural products, how our farmers need to make more money. At the same time, we have challenges on the cold chain, on the delivery, on the logistics, which is sort of not able to support that. We're talking about setting up SEZs to do food processing. To me, where the rubber hits the road is really this part, right? You have a large base of traditionally grown pulses, Indian. If we can have an ecosystem, which eventually will come with time, will be driven by market, but if it can get policy support, you have a setup where you are able to extract value out of these crops, in terms of absolute protein conversions, in terms of different formats that end users need. I mean, then you can graduate from being just a grower to being a value-added producer. And to me, I mean, just based on the numbers that we see, it holds tremendous potential. Now, how much of this we're able to sort of tap into, how much of this we're able to scale up, I think does not just depend on entrepreneurs like, the gentlemen we have on the panel, but also a lot on which way policy goes. And I'm hoping that, for once we all get this to come together, because it can converge into a very, very interesting cocktail in terms of, what potential it holds for India.
Exactly. Yeah, Tejas, totally agreed with a lot of the points you made there. And, at GFI India, we work across science, business, and policy. So, Nicole, I just wanted to, round it out with how has your work at GFI, evolved over the past year, and what are some of the key trends that you see in the smart protein ecosystem going in the next year?
Yeah, thank you, Sen. I think it's been a super exciting time to be in the industry. I think the last year, especially 2021, we saw the sector in India really move into this phase of market activity. And that came after years of ecosystem building work and all of the disruptions with the pandemic. We finally came to a place where products were being launched in the market, whether it was Evolve Foods or OT being launched through the F&B segments. We saw companies like Imagine Meats and Blue Tribe Foods launched through retail. And consumers finally got the opportunity to interact with these products, to touch and feel and taste these products, which they didn't have the opportunity to do before. And that really helped to drive awareness about what these products are, who these products are for, and for retailers and for food service providers, how they could improve accessibility to these products as well, not just for a vegetarian population, but for that omnivore flexitarian market that was either looking to reduce their meat intake or looking to try alternatives to their traditional, meat products that they would likely order in a restaurant. So it's been a really exciting time. And I think we've spoken about this before, but we're really looking in the next couple of years and in the next couple of, in our work at GFI over the next year as well, we're really looking for companies to move beyond that early adopter market of 50 to 70 million, residing in our top cities, and move to that real hundreds of million mass market, which is the actual market for these products. We've talked about how, India is a nutritionally deficient country. Our population is nutritionally deficient because of our lack of protein in our diets. And so really, when we're talking about these products, we're talking about it, of course, from a taste and convenience point of view, but we're also talking about it from an access to protein and health point of view. And really looking forward to working with startups to be able to drive this opportunity and access to these alternative meat products across the length and the breadth of the country, with innovation that they have on price, innovation on formats in order to enable them to scale, innovation on manufacturing and things like that. So I guess that's really what I'm looking forward to and the direction the industry is likely to grow.
Exactly. And continuing to talk about some of these trends, health, flexitarianism, sustainability have been buzzwords in the media while describing this sector. But where does India really stand on these trends? And, what would be some of the major drivers of repeat consumption across channels that we've seen for products? And I'll actually start off with Sridhar. Could you give some insight on the purchase patterns that you're seeing with respect to this category on BigBasket? What would be some of the main drivers of repeat consumption and potential reasons for discontinuing?
Okay, let me take some proxies of other categories where we're seeing a steady growth in year-on-year growth or month-on-month growth. So last 4-5 years, we are seeing a gradual trend towards products which are minimally processed actually. So there are certain brands which have grown 4x, 5x over the last 3-4 years on our platform. One of the key USPs for these products is the minimally processed this one. So I would expect the same thing as a retailer, even for plant-based dairy or meat alternatives. Second is the most important aspect of the taste profile of the product. So it has to suit your taste. That's a very, very important thing, especially when it comes to categories like processed food, and more so in a nation where we love munching every now and then. Actually, we need an occasion for it. Okay, that's one part. And third most important thing is the affordability point of view. It should be affordable. It should be on par in terms of pricing with the regular product or a comparable product. This is on the consumer point of view. From the supply chain point of view, I think so the most important thing is most of these products are tagged as chilled frozen products. So you would need a certain level of cold chain infrastructure that we already spoke. That's very, very important to ensure that the product reaches in a way that is intended actually. That's my guess.
Yep, that's great to hear. And I think a lot of our consumer research that we have conducted at GFI India, it also has very, very similar results. And so we do see very similar patterns emerging. And I want to actually talk to Ankush about how the product trials have been going, and what's been exactly in a more food service sense. What have been some of those patterns that are emerging?
Yeah. So actually, Sridhar covered two of those patterns, which is taste and price, right? So very rightly, we are in India, so we cannot be kidding if we are not going to focus on taste. That's one. In terms of the price, of course, very sensitive market, so we have to keep price in mind. what's come out as one key trend during our consumer trials, and also when we did our friends and family sale, B2B sampling, is the fact that people are very open to experimenting with it, whether to make desserts or protein shakes or smoothies, hot chocolate and coffee, cappuccinos, beverages. So that's interesting, which means people are open to doing it if there is a product which shows that potential. Maybe almond and soy might not have worked the way oat milk works, right? So there definitely is some merit in its case in that particular way. Surprisingly, again, consumers are very keen to know the ingredients and nutritional profile. It's not that they'll just grab and go. So they want to know where is the ingredients coming from. They probably want to understand the protein profile. They want to understand what are the preservatives. Of course, this is a niche audience, no denying that. But that is a trend, right? That's a consumer trend, and a large urban population who are into wellness, who are into fitness, who understand the food they're putting into their mouth, are going to be focusing on the nutritional profile as well as ingredients. So that's important because then we have a tricky battle with price, right? As soon as you increase the quality of the product, the price will have to change. So it's a tricky rope we'll have to walk for a while till we figure out the scale versus the price. Or else, of course, as you have some premium category products, you'll have to position yourself in the premium space. So each company, each brand will have to figure out what space they want to work in terms of whether the scale or the premiums. And I'd probably lastly mention that India is a country of jugaad, right? I mean, we adjust to everything. Somehow I feel, this is just my opinion, this is not scientific, but I think we have kind of even adjusted to lactose intolerance. It's not that we are not lactose intolerant. Apna adjust ho gaya. It's like that. And that's because we are Indians. That's our nature. We just get used to things, and probably our biology gets used to it. Because a lot of people came back saying they felt very light after having oat milk. They didn't feel bloated. They didn't have a digestion issue. Their gut functioning kind of improved. So it's very evident that lactose intolerance is there, but people are not very well aware of it. So with the right product, right placement, and maybe a good spend in terms of making people understand why gut health is important, and how in fact gut health is where it all starts. If your gut is a bit screwed up, if I may say, everything else is going to be affected. So if somehow you can focus on the microbiome of your gut and products which are going to be friendly to your microbiome, it's going to be a huge wellness and fitness product. Those are some of the patterns we observed.
Yeah. So moving on to, I guess, with respect to, I think, some of the restaurant partners that you've launched with, how have how has the consumer response been in those restaurants? And are you guys currently doing any consumer trials?
We are. So it's just that 3 months back we launched. So the data that we are working with is fairly limited. Having said that, if you actually look at it, first knock on the door, in most cases we have seen it is because of curiosity. Ye hai kya? How does it taste? How does it fit into my diet? So there is a lot of curiosity around it, which is what is driving people to order it the first time. And if your product appeals to their palate, and they come back and repeat the order, is when you can start categorizing them into multiple buckets. And Indians by default, I think to a large extent, do not even consider themselves flexitarian without knowing that they are already flexitarians. So I would say most of the consumers have been falling between either health conscious or environmentally conscious. There is also this new term which has been going around, which is reducitarian, which is like plant forward. If there is a choice of vegan alternative, then I would go with that. Otherwise, I'll go with whatever is traditional meat that I used to consume. So that is the pattern that we have witnessed. People choosing plant-based to a large extent is still a niche at this moment. But I think as we go along, as the awareness gets created, it will be a significant population. And curiosity-driven population is not something that we should ignore, because there are about 500 million people or 50 crore people out there who are vegetarians, out of whom even a certain percentage, if they're curious about knowing how does plant meat taste, or let me have that experience without feeling guilty about it, it's a huge market out there.
Yeah. And Tejas, I think as a company which, helps brands with their ingredient needs as well as product development, how do these consumer trends, affect the product development process and, your business?
So no, I think the panelists who spoke before me have very rightly put it that things are changing, right? I mean, there is a definite shift to at least curiosity, which is driving a whole lot of other things in terms of people wanting to experiment, wanting to try. Over the years, what we've seen with these kind of ingredients is that earlier it was a push on our part. We used to spend days together at a QSR just to get time to conduct a trial so that they would see the value of what we were talking about. We would drop hints with examples of success in other parts of the world to say, this is how you can position the product. So what if you are a QSR which traditionally does this? And now, since the last couple of years especially, it's been more of a pull, where people are curious to know about what prototypes have we been developing. People want to understand more in detail as to if they have a certain positioning in mind, what are the different formats we can work out for them. And our role is, while the role of a reseller, these large ingredient manufacturers who we represent, they depend on us for taking product out in the market, for getting new development. So ours is a pretty robust application development setup as well. And more what we are seeing is that we have customers coming forward wanting to take advantage of that, wanting to partner to create something new. And I'll be honest, for every 10 customers, there's probably one that sort of is able to go to year 2 and year 3. But I think that's the good news, that there are 10 now. And our role is not limited then just in application development. We help them with regulatory, we help them with scaling up. So more and more, if there is support provided, it seems evident to us that our customer base at least is evolving and changing in a direction which is very attractive for us as well.
Yeah, that's really insightful, Tejas. And I think I would want to stay on this point of establishing these distribution partnerships with companies like yours, and just in categories like food service and e-commerce, and distribution partnerships are some of the most important things that companies and brands can do to really scale up. And I want to actually ask you, Tejas, what are some of those key factors that determine the success of these distribution partnerships, especially involving new and novel food products?
Well, I think nothing spells success like success, right? So it's the success of the final product eventually, which generates everything from that point onwards. But I think an important case in point is that you cannot just be out there with an ingredient to sell. I mean, it's important to understand that there has to be a certain amount of peripheral support, which is always needed, so that you can have a situation where the customer eventually scales up, the customer sort of evolves their offerings as well and has a successful business, which you can also get benefit of. So I think a combination of ingredient, product knowledge, lab application development support, the QA, QC, and supply chain, these are all, woven in. These are all, you cannot have a situation without any one of these in order to make your customer successful. And the way we like to think about it is, we want every brand that comes in to succeed. It's in our interest as well. And we will go that extra length and extra mile to make sure that we have what it takes to make that happen. So it's a combination of factors. maybe 15 years ago, it was just showing up with a product was enough. It is not enough today, for sure. And it's going to become even more demanding in the time to come.
Thanks a lot, Tejas, for that. So 15 years ago, there was no e-commerce as well. There wasn't much, especially in terms of groceries and food products. So Sridhar, are there any additional factors to consider when establishing distribution partnerships for e-commerce, or are they very similar to distribution partnerships for offline channels?
See, one interesting thing that you see with the advent of e-commerce, actually, you see a lot of D2C brands fast emerging. So that's the flavor of the season. In fact, there are a lot of companies now funded on the D2C model, which heavily rely on an e-commerce channel or a modern trade channel, kind of more so e-commerce because it's highly evolved. What I would suggest is somebody who's planning to set up their own brand, this is the channel to target for the simple reason that it's a very niche segment. It's a very niche category. Probably in the entire population, I'm just talking of urban population, there'll be 1 or 1.5% of the total population who are willing to experiment or who are willing to try out these kind of products. And the best part, partnering with an e-commerce channel like Big Basket or any other channel, is that you get a live feedback of what is happening actually. And that feedback is very, very important. So you have a very robust ratings and reviews mechanism, which is visible to you as a supplier, which is visible to me as a retailer, and even to a customer who's wanting to experiment with that product or who's wanting to try that product. I think so. Way going forward for these kind of niche categories which we term as future categories, actually internally emerging categories. I think so. This is the best channel to try out. Once you have a firm footing here, sky is the limit for you in terms of growth.
Exactly. I think e-commerce and D2C are how majority of brands in this space have launched initially, and it is going to be a really important channel going forward. But coming to restaurants, they're usually the first point of experimentation for any new food items. And what we cannot really talk about restaurants without talking about the pandemic. And I'd really like to know from the panelists how it has been working with restaurants over the past 2 years. So Pradeep, how has COVID-19 impacted your partnership process and for your process for building out, these partnerships? Do you see really digital ordering platforms as an opportunity to lessen the impact of restaurant closures or, lack of restaurant capacity, but also like an opportunity to build like a significant product awareness that was probably not possible when you're talking about a local restaurant versus on the internet where millions of people can view your product?
So Cloud Kitchen's straight answer, 2 thumbs up. So we are already working with a few and we will be announcing a few more. Having said that, I think one of the most affected industry through this pandemic has been HoReCa. So with the rents piling up, the salaries going out, with people not coming out, actually they have been burning a lot of cash. And when they are affected as value chain partners, we also take a little bit of brunt of it, if not significant as well. But we are confident that the industry will come back very quickly. And also the pandemic seems to be tapering off the third wave. And it might lead to a much brighter 2022 ahead. When it comes to the sit-in restaurant or a order-in pattern, I don't think these two consumers are mutually exclusive in most cases. It's a simple decision whether you want to step out and have your food or you want to eat at home. So we need to be in both the categories. We need to make sure that people are able to experience this across the channels. Having said that, the parameters through which you need to manage that first moment of truth will change across both of these channels. So when it comes to restaurant, it is see, smell, and taste. When it comes to delivery, it might very well be unbox, reheat, and consume. So you need to understand how consumer is going through this experience and where and all it can become your last stop. So as long as you're able to understand, assess, and work with the restaurants which are open to partner with you and collaborate, I think we can create a brilliant experience for the consumers and have that stickiness, which is very important.
Thanks, Pradeep. I think some really great insights from how you view a lot of these platforms. But Tejas, coming back to you, how have really Cornell's partnerships with QSRs changed during the course of the pandemic across waves? And what are some keys to success for suppliers and distributors during this new age?
Well, to be very honest, during the first wave and a little bit after, that market was shut out for us as far as new developments were concerned. I think people were just grappling basically with operations, and maybe the part of the business that they were trying to modify or survive or change was not related to what we could bring to the table. So our operations with QSRs at that time were pretty much static. What we did see eventually through 2021 was that there was fair amount of development activity in terms of the plant-based protein part. And perhaps that was driven, and our work is with the brand owner, and we leave it to the brand owner where and how they want to position it. So somebody could have a sit-down format as well as a delivery format, but it's absolutely up to them as to how they position the final products where they use our ingredients. We did see a lot of push coming, and I think a lot of that was driven by increasing awareness on health, increasing awareness about just wellness. And I think it was kind of running parallel to the overall increase in these areas that we saw in the media everywhere else. The other thing that we've seen with QSRs now is that there are many more experiments. There is less fear to experiment. And because of which our ability to introduce more new ingredients has increased quite a bit in the last 1 year. Now, I'm not saying all of these are a success or all of these sort of go to the level as expected, but that level of activity and the frequency of new ingredient adoption is much higher right now, for sure. I think if we can combine this with, so a lot of the work that we do with new ingredients has the science along with it. So combining the science with it and just giving enough tips to help them clarify their positioning can really set up something much more robust where success can be more guaranteed.
Continuing on with this topic of, I guess, new food products and, I guess, just restaurants being more willing to try out new things. Ankush, what has been your experience managing and building a smart protein company during this time, and especially one that works mainly with restaurants? How has the response of restaurants been?
So I wouldn't really call ourselves smart protein yet, because we are yet to formulate a high protein product. So maybe then I'll call ourselves a smart protein company. So I think it takes something big to question a belief system, right, in general. And I think this COVID has done that for a lot of people, whether with respect to climate change or health. When something as big as COVID and what it all brought for us came, people automatically focused a little bit more on the wellness part of their life, and maybe some of them even understood climate change, what it's all about, and what's happening all around the world. So definitely that's given a bit of a push start, a favorable COVID, if I may say. But then it's also given us time to respond slowly. Because it takes a lot to get out a right product. Most of the panelists have said that multiple times, and they agree that consumer is king, and you have to, of course, make sure the product is right for the market. So it's given us time from where we were with the very initial trials where we had sugar instead of stevia, what we are using now. Or let's say, for example, some flavors we ruled out. We ruled out things like mango. We ruled out a pure vanilla flavor. We ruled out a pineapple. And there were a few flavors which we started experimenting with. The packaging size, right? And these are the things which need time. And I think COVID slowed us, and that was good for us because we got time to actually focus on the product. And right now we are also working on something which could be in the millet milk space. So that has given us time to respond to both B2B and B2C. And the B2B launches were also favorable because we had brands like Hati Kapi or Milano Ice Cream or Coffee Mechanics in Bangalore who were willing to go that distance. They understood that this is a new product and the market is gray and it's an opportunity. It's a blue ocean, to be honest. So I think there will be advantage for early movers, whether in B2B or for the brands. I think it is about perceiving and sustaining your momentum and having your vision aligned, being clear about what kind of impact you want to make and is that product aligned to the impact you want to create. If the product is aligned and of course with things like price that needs to fall in place, I think it would not be a big challenge. Keeping funding apart, out of context right now, because of course that will be an important part for any brand to get out there and actually scale up because the market is very gray. And I'd probably lastly say that it's very important to, in my opinion, to collaborate with brands who understand what you're doing, because only those are the ones who would actually take the plunge with you. So some of the brands that we are working with on the R&D and consumer trials do understand, and we actually have to have those very open conversations with them and show them where their brand also can have a vision of, whether it is, let's say, just simply launching a vegan hot chocolate, because that will position the brand differently in the consumer's mindset. So those beyond the regular B2B conversations have to happen, is what we felt. And I'm happy that COVID delayed us, because I think otherwise we would have had a lot more obstacles and a lot more setbacks. I think early setbacks are good. That's how I view it.
So, talking about setbacks, Sridhar, I wanted to really, elaborate on some of the challenges this category as a whole faces in the future, and what would be some of the greatest challenges, and how can brands and how can companies in this space really, identify them early and set them up for success.
So two aspects to this entire problem statement that you said. One is, of course, the awareness part that we're talking from a consumer point of view. Luckily now you have all these channels which can directly make your product visible. Second is the disproportionate amount of investment that you need to do actually to create awareness about this product. So at Big Basket, we also in that thought process of creating a platform for all the vegan manufacturers, both meat and milk based, this one, where every brand owner gets an opportunity to showcase their brands or talk about their brands with the customer connect or a new brand initiatives program, new category initiative program. So we take it on a yearly basis every year. So next year is actually to plan something similar to that. And we've got in touch with certain brands actually in over last 2-3 months, just to understand what are the challenges that they are facing. One is, of course, the distribution that you have, and the kind of customer, the kind of clientele that you're looking at, because since this is a very, very niche product, I think so these are two major concerns. And my experience says that I think this modern trade channel, specifically the e-commerce channel, can be a a kind of a solution, a first stop gap kind of a thing, where you can understand the consumer's need for these kind of products.
Thanks, Sridhar. And Nicole, I have a very similar question for you. In your advisory work with startups, what is the what have they identified as some of the greatest challenges, and how is GFI really helping to solve some of these?
Yeah, so I think there's like a range of challenges that have come up, but as more and more companies are getting ready to launch their products and have a MVP product available, I think launch to market has been a bit difficult, either because of delays with the pandemic or just getting the right distribution partners on board. So we always advise startups to use an omni-channel approach. So if they are partnering with QSR, to also consider other e-commerce channels, or to consider brick and mortar retail as well, which gives them a lot of visibility that they might not have otherwise gotten through a D2C channel that they were sort of handling themselves. So that's one of the big pieces of advice we give them. And then secondly, I think on positioning as well, I think a lot of the panelists have alluded to these points in different ways. Sridhar, when you were talking about, surveys that you did with the big basket consumers, and Tejas, when you were talking about product development that you're doing for a bunch of companies, whether it's in terms of hitting those health factors or things like that. I think what's really important here is to identify who your target market is really early on, and ensure that whatever markets or whatever channels that you're using to reach that consumer, you have a very clear idea of who that consumer is. So if we're talking about potentially a market for plant-based meat, consumers really hitting those requirements of taste, of mimicking that entire experience of consuming meat. So when we're thinking about it in terms of cloud kitchens, Pradeep, as you mentioned, the entire experience that the consumer goes through from ordering that product to possibly reheating that product and then eating that product, all of those are things that startups really need to be thinking about, and really need to be putting the consumer experience at the center. I think food is a very cultural thing. Food is a very personal thing. And it's important to give people that same experience that they're familiar with, even with the product category that's new and emerging, and that might not be so familiar to them right now. And similarly with the dairy category, it's really important that startups are able to hit those functionality factors. Based on a lot of consumer research that we've done as well, a lot of plant-based dairy consumers, at least in the Indian market, are also consumers of animal-derived dairy. So really thinking about consumer occasions for consuming these products as well. So if you're thinking about it from a food service point of view, can you do product launches around the festive season where people might not be consuming non-vegetarian food for cultural or religious reasons? Can you think about occasions when these products are going to be consumed? So if it's plant-based dairy, using it in your cereal, how does it work? How does the cereal react with the milk? If you're using it in tea, how well or not so well does the milk react? Is it splitting? So really thinking about those consumer occasions is also pieces of advice that we give them, and then using those using that evidence and using some of that knowledge to inform your channel approach, whether it's through retail, whether it's through food service, whether it's through brick and mortar, really getting the customer to use your product in the way that your product functions best.
Thanks a lot for the commentary on especially important occasions and the whole customer experience, Nicole. And I think I would want to end this panel by talking again about the export opportunity for India. Tejas, as someone who has first-hand experience building a global distribution business for food and ingredients, could you talk about some of the challenges but also opportunities that the Indian food industry and this sector have in preparing products for the export market?
Yeah, I think this is a time like no other, if you ask me. I think we are at the cusp of something which can really be revolutionary. These might sound like very big words, but for the first time, you have a convergence of information, awareness, money where India is not lagging behind any other country. Now, when you think about this in a way that can sort of all come together and come together in a way where policy meets money meets entrepreneurship, this can make for a very successful foray into value-added products from these ingredients. And like I alluded to earlier, the world is aware that India has a lot of these plant-based meats, for example, or at least the ingredients for that. Now, if there can be a combination, there will be no time like earlier where you had to depend on some half-broken chains of supply chain. You had to depend on various different government export policies and procedures. You perhaps were not aware of the market to the fullest extent that you are. I think it's a very different world for Indian potential exporters right now. And to me, it's a time of great promise. So we are still skimming the surface, and there is a huge upside if we can marry the science, do the positioning right, and convert that into a successful value-added export initiative. So yeah, I am very positive about this. We can see green shoots at many places. We will need to keep up in terms of infrastructure and investments required, but I think that can only be inspiring to many other entrepreneurs to come up in this field.
So I actually wanted to end this panel by asking, because we've already talked about how much progress we've made, but also the need for faster adoption, because to really reach some very ambitious numbers. So Nicole, I just wanted to end this by asking, how can we use insights from adoption of plant-based products from international and mature markets to drive faster adoption in India?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. But to Tejas's point as well, which I really agree on, actually, I think there's no time like now, especially for this industry. I think we're at a time which is really interesting because we're a pre-competitive industry, not just in India, but globally. And so there really is potential to collaborate across, between the startup and the corporate ecosystem, between the startup and the university landscape, but also cooperate cross-country as well. And there's huge potential for India to work with more mature markets like the Netherlands, like the US, like Israel, and really leverage existing knowledge, leverage existing technology within these markets through bilateral relationships, whether that's a relationship, a technology transfer relationship, or a knowledge transfer relationship. There really is potential to leverage what's already out there instead of trying to reinvent the wheel over here. So I think in general, there's huge, huge potential to forge some of these relationships, start speaking to people within the industry itself. And I'd really encourage, startups, encourage corporates to really forge some of those relationships right now because of the state that the industry is in right now. And it's a unique position to find yourself in. But apart from that, just in terms of some of the data and insights that we've been receiving, I think one thing that stands out clearly is the positioning of these products. I think with these next generation alternative protein products that Pradeep is creating with Evolve Foods, for example, there is potential to target not just a small niche vegan and vegetarian population, but rather a much larger omnivore flexitarian market. That's curious, that's excited, that's wants to try these products, and all the consumer surveys are pointing towards this, that they're excited, they're curious to try it, and then them purchasing it for the second time, of course, is dependent on how the product performs for them in terms of taste, in terms of how they're receiving the product and things like that. But the positioning is something that we've seen world over land on not just the vegan and vegetarian, but the larger omnivore population. Apart from that, I think, again, we've been talking a lot about health and environmental concerns, but really, again, globally, what we've seen in order to hit that true mass market, price and taste really emerge as key factors to influence consumers' trial as well as continued consumption. really perceived taste and price are among the top reasons that consumers will try something or they won't try something. And so a lot of R&D is needed in order for products to be able to compete on both of these two factors. Apart from that, I think we've assembled a great panel in that e-commerce and retail, as well as food service, are really among the most important factors in order to get these products in front of the consumer. So when it comes to e-commerce and retail, maybe selling plant-based products, if it's in a brick and mortar store adjacent to your animal-based meat counterparts, or if it's on an e-commerce website, listing it under the same category just to drive consumer awareness of what these products are and how these products can potentially be consumed. And as we've seen, increased consumer awareness usually translates to increased consumer adoption of these products as well. As soon as consumers become more familiar with what they're eating, they're more likely to try it. They're more likely to introduce their friends or their family to it, cook it for their friends and family, share in the eating of that product. So that's one thing. And then apart from that, with food service, it's a great way to introduce consumers to products at the right occasion. So I mentioned earlier, having launches around the festive season, launching the right kinds of products in the right kinds of formats, and really getting it to the consumer in a format that makes it taste and perform its best. So really, those I would say are the three key data points that we've seen translate not just from the European and the US ecosystem, but we're seeing that play out a lot more in the Indian ecosystem as well, especially as we're seeing more products launch in the market.
So thanks to all our panelists for making some great points, and we had a good diversity of not only companies, but B2B ingredient suppliers, as well as Sridhar from Big Basket. So we were really had a very good panel, and I'd actually want to now invite Raman to give some closing thoughts and potentially have a Q&A section. But I do see that we've gone over time slightly.
Thanks, Hussein, and thanks to everybody. It's been quite enlightening, and I think we've had a very active Q&A box. And thanks to Nicole, Ankush, and Sridhar for responding online. And some people shared their points in the chat box as well. It's clearly a space which is waiting to grow. And if you just see some comparators, millets as a category is starting to see revival in India, especially among urban consumers. And in the last 2 years, you've seen ITC launching its range of millet-based flours, and Tata buying out Soulful, which is a millet cereal maker. So I think millets is going to grow. Similarly, I believe this category should see a lot of growth with ITC coming in with their range of products. In fact, a conversation with the CEO of ITC Foods a few months ago, he was quite hesitant to reveal what they were doing, realizing that they were on the verge of launching their range. So we see large companies coming in, which makes it very exciting for all of you guys, especially the startups, to engage in this space. Really glad to hear what Sridhar mentioned about creating that platform of companies, of entrepreneurs, especially in this space, and enabling them to reach out in a much more structured way. I think we need many more such constructs. GFI is doing a great job, but if retailers like Basket can actually also come up, and others can come up and create such forums, I think this will push the consumer acceptance of the products. I have a couple of questions, especially for the entrepreneurs, Pradeep and Ankush. I mean, your dollars to spend are very, very limited. If you were to, pinpoint one area where you would use your money to communicate with your target audience, what would that be? What would be that messaging that you would want to go out or to be received? Any thoughts, Pradeep, Ankush?
So I think last year, I think this was Nestle Global CEO had mentioned this is an opportunity that generations come across once in a while. So I think this is a fabulous opportunity, and it's important that people open their mind, try to see it for what it is, and give it a fair chance.
So if you were to market your product, what will be that one tagline that you would want to?
Healthier you, healthier planet.
Brilliant. And how about you, Ankush?
I think, Raman, one thing probably would want to spend on is customer acquisition, because nowadays the customers are so vocal that every customer you can convert will become a brand ambassador if you've got them with the right reasons. So I think we would want to spend as much as possible on acquiring customers.
Okay, and doing so, what is your communication that you want the customers to receive?
I think, yeah, I mean, what we are in a sense trying to communicate to the customers is a tastier, healthier, and a kinder choice, which will be guilt-free. So I think, yeah, like Pradeep mentioned, it will definitely revolve around wellness and health, and probably we'd like to throw in sustainability in the mix, because we do have a rising population who understands sustainability. So in addition to what Pradeep said, we'll throw in sustainability.
I think that's brilliant. Hope to actually latch on to many of the large companies.
Thank you.
Are pretty slow in getting there, though they have enough dollars to spend. And I think that will bring early adopters to come into your target segment. And clearly, yes, if you're able to catch on to this health combined with sustainability, I think that's really a good combination. It's a long road, believe me. I've been, on this for over 20 years with Unilever and others, but it's a very long road. But I think we have black swan events like this COVID, so we will get this leg up. Tejas, you typically, your organization works with large companies. Here you have a set of startups on this panel and otherwise. What are some of the international good practices that you see that could help these people to build their products and experiment and fail at a low cost?
Yeah, I think while we have more view and ground up view of entrepreneurship in India, our exposure to stakeholders in the West is more limited to our supplier partners. But one difference that I have seen, and we notice every time, is that culturally we are a population that is in a hurry. We like to say things like we do jugaad and we sort of adjust and all that. And I think that's fine in a certain context. But I think a lot of the places where we could do better when compared to, say, more developed markets or markets which have those entrepreneurs is paying more detail to process. I like the fact what Ankush spoke about spending time to get the product right. I think doing it right and doing it a right way that can be replicated efficiently, easily, and scaled up is more valuable than doing it fast. And while this may sound a bit generic, this is one difference that we do see in terms of how we see smaller companies outside of India operate. So that perhaps for what it's worth, that's my 2 bit.
No, makes a lot of sense. And this is going to be a challenge because it's about discovering how to collaborate. And I think Ankush mentioned, or Pradeep, you mentioned that people need to come together and work together to actually hasten the pace in this sector, so that we will definitely see failures, but I think a lot of those failures will lead to successes by the same people or by others who will kind of learn from them. And I think that's really what is. Sridhar, a question for you. Regulations, FSSAI and others are still evolving, right? I mean, there's been a lot of in the last few weeks they've placed out this stuff on GM food regulations, and I think in this space also there's been a lot of discussion. In your work with different suppliers and partners, how do you deal? What are the challenges you see as a retailer, on the regulatory space, and how do you address those things? How do you support your partners?
I think so. We recently faced this issue of plant-based milk. Actually, there was some regulation from FSSAI, and we had to immediately communicate it to all our vendors. So as a first line of action, what we did is that we slightly modified the product description so that it doesn't lead to a non-compliance. At the same time, vendors also, supplier partners are not also at a catch-22 situation kind of a thing. To be very honest, this is an evolving situation specifically for plant-based products actually. We keep getting these notifications. The idea whenever we get this kind of notifications is to not hamper the existing operations and support suppliers in whatever way possible so that they are at a minimal risk actually.
Raman, sorry if I could just interject there as well. I just want to stress the point that I don't think that GM is necessary to grow the smart protein industry, whether that's on the plant-based side of things that are, in terms of crop optimization, there's other ways to do that apart from GM, and even on the fermentation side of things or the cultivated meat side of things, you don't necessarily have to use GM or GMO techniques. I just wanted to state that as well.
Sure, and thanks for pointing that out, Nicole. My single purpose of mentioning that was that while GM has been around, there's been debate. FSSAI is only now talking about regulations, whereas this as a space is very recent. So the challenges will continue to get thrown up and hopefully will get addressed. But I think hopefully a lot of these regulations will respond to consumer feedback and not just retailer or manufacturer feedback, because I think ultimately consumers should get the choice in as to what gets sold and consumed in the country. So listen, brilliant panel. Kudos to all of you for the pioneering work. I must say still pioneering work. I'm sure there'll be few generations that will be coming behind you people. And I think we will continue to engage with all of you as we go forward. I just want to mention that the recording of this session would be available on the ThinkAg website and also on the GFI website. So somebody asked about the presentation. So, you have the access to recording so you could look at it. But feel free to write to us or to our colleagues at GFI, and we'll be happy to respond. And really, let's build this movement and let's drive the agenda of sustainable and healthy living. Thank you very much, and have a good evening and happy Republic Day Eve to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Pleasure being
Thank
here.
you. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Stay safe and keep well. Yep.